welcome to another episode of Ringgit Sense, the show where we talk to you about personal finance. I'm your host, Azaria Tagaya. In today's episode, we're talking about marriage and money. This time, we're talking about financial questions that newlywed couples should ask. Who pays for what bills, and should you start a joint account? Well, these are just some of the questions that we'll be asking the Financial Planning Association of Malaysia a little bit later. Before that, we spoke to a young family to find out their monthly expenses and how they approach the topic of spending and also saving for their family.
Aisha Shamsuddin works in the private sector, while her husband, Muhammad Hairil Faiz Hamzah, is a takaful consultant. They've been married almost 4 years and have 2 sons, 2-year-old Ahmad Ali and 3-month-old Ahmad Omar.
Pendapatan untuk, kalau kami combine lah pendapatan untuk family kita, boleh kata sederhana lah. So kalau macam perbelanjaan rumah, sebab kita duduk dekat dalam rumah family, so dengan parents sekali lah, and then kat situ kami dah save dekat untuk dari segi sewa rumah, and then untuk kalau kita duduk dengan family ni, biasanya kita akan sumbang untuk ni lah, makanan, macam makanan, lepas tu bil ke mana yang kita boleh tolong kan, so kita spend kat situ lah. So kalau untuk kita punya income, mostly kita spend dekat anak-anak lah, untuk anak-anak punya saving, anak-anak punya takaful, anak-anak punya pampers, susu.
They own a house in Bandar Sarjana Putra, but have found that a change in careers means staying there is not financially beneficial. So now they are renting out the property.
Sebab kita dah jimat dekat kos untuk sewa rumah, lepas tu duit yang tu kita macam bayar, kita kongsi-kongsi bayar bil, lepas tu bayar grocery. Bukannya semua yang family belilah, kita pun ada chip in sekali lah.
Kita kongsi lah. Kalau andai kata saya kurang income, dia akan top up sikit. Andai kata dia kurang, dan saya akan top up lah. Kita
kongsi-kongsi lah.
Aisha says the family spends about 500 ringgit per month on milk and diapers for the kids.
Maksudnya termasuk sekali dengan pampers yang Ali, dengan Omar, lepas tu dengan susu Ali. Tapi sebab Omar ni dia susu badan, so kita dah jimat kat situ lah. Tapi kasar, kiraan kasar, belanjaan kasar dalam lebih kurang 500 macam tu.
As a young family living in the Klang Valley, transportation takes up the most of their daily expenditure.
Kalau macam saya, personally, sebab saya kerja, saya jumpa orang, dan saya banyak nak kena keluar, banyak travel. So, kat situ dari segi petrol, dari segi tol, itu yang banyak consume saya punya income lah kat situ. So, kalau kat situ dapat jimat, alhamdulillah. Kalau macam dia, sebab dia punya cost to travel, nak pergi tempat kerja pula, pun sama juga, minyak and then tol lagi kan. Itulah banyak yang kita punya ni.
Ali and Omar's future is the main priority for this young family.
Dari segi financial planning, maksudnya prioritinya kita nak securekan duit untuk anak-anak punya education.
So with us in the studio today is Lynette Lee, the CEO of the Financial Planning Association of Malaysia, to help us navigate this interesting topic. Okay, so hello there, and thank you so much for joining us today on Ringgit Sense. So we're talking about marriage and money. When exactly should a young family talk about expenses? Should the topic of money be brought up even before the marriage proposal?
First and foremost, getting married is a very exciting time. And a lot of families are or couples will be focused on the proposal, the acceptance, where they're going to propose. And that also costs them money as it is already. But yes, certainly proposal and acceptance, and after that, they should actually start to make some time to talk about finances. In fact, I think the first finance they should need to talk about is the marriage itself, because a budget must be set aside, where they want to have it, who are they going to invite, and behind the finances, there's also the sentiments of the family members on how culturally they're going to organize the wedding and all that. So those are very important as well. So the other thing is also for the wedding, what are they going to have? Are they going to have that pre-wedding, get together, especially the ladies and then the guys, and then after that, they need to sit down and say, okay, now that we're going to get married, who is going to pay what bills, and who is going to take the lead, whether we're going to have a joint account. If we don't want to have a joint, if we're going to have a joint account, then how is it going to be? Because it's very common to see families discuss things like they put their joint account together, family expenses. Then they will have their own personal expenses separate, because then, especially if both couples are going to be continue working, because at the end of the day, when they do that, then they feel happier, because when I spend my money, you don't question me, and if you spend your money, I don't question you. Yeah. But the scenario is different if the couple there's one where the couple stays at home. The spouse stays at home, either one. Nowadays, with this, we don't have anything like, sometimes men stay at home. Yeah. Women goes to work.
Stay-at-home dads, we have that as well.
So when that happens, then things will change. Then you'll find that normally the husband is the one who takes the lead. The husband is the one who decides how the finances go. But it is very important that while this is going on, the wife must also know something about the finances, because it is common to see a lot of families, should anything happen to the spouse who is the breadwinner, then the one who is dependent will not know what to do. So finances are something which I think is a partnership. It's not just about getting married and who takes what physical, logistical things in the house. Like somebody look after the house, somebody goes out and earn money. It's also the money is very important, because at the end of the day, the family and the children, it's very important for them know how it's going to go.
Okay, so you mentioned that couples should actually consider having their accounts, a joint account actually. So what actually are the benefits of having a joint account, and when can you take out money from that account, and is that something that's up for discussion as well?
Yes. What happens is there are also families who have separate accounts because they will have allotment. So it depends on each family also. So there is no one fast rules. It's depending on each family and each couple how they want to work out their finances. I have seen families who, like previously when I used to hold a license, I used to have clients. The husband would take care of one portion. Like for example, anything to do with the house, he would take care. The wife would take care of anything to do with the children. So that in that sense, they actually have separate accounts. So that is one way. But the one that joint account, which is quite common, is anything to do with the family and the children goes into the joint account. So each will take a portion of their salary and they put into that joint account, and then they keep the rest for their own personal expenses.
Okay. So is that joint account, does it count for savings, or should they have like a separate plan for savings and an education fund? How does that work?
Very commonly, the money will be pulled together, and if they should have any investments or investments or purchasing of properties and all that, those that's for the family then will be in joint account. Yes, it'll be joint account.
Okay, so how much should they set aside from their incomes towards savings then? Let's say they don't have a child yet.
Well, as a rule of thumb, families should be using about 70% of their income into family expenses. So it may be good to put that in. At the end of the day, it would also be good for them to sit down and work out what are the things that they want, because different families, different couples will have different things. Some may decide that they want to stay with their family. Therefore, they don't need to think about houses. But they may want to have children. So you need to list out your priorities. What are the things that you want? And at the end of the day, you also need to know how much you will need to save from there. So from there onwards, then you put aside. But generally, rule of thumb, 70% of a person's income goes into family, into expenses, necessary expenses.
And the rest, you can save how much you can save, you save.
Correct.
Okay, so you also mentioned about living with your family or living on your own.
Yes.
As soon as you get married, when is if you have to stay with your family for a while, what's the limit on that? How
How long should you stay before you move out? Well, it's also dependent. Some families, they like their children to stay with them. And if they have enough rooms in the house and the family relationship is very good and harmonious, then chances are the married couple may stay for a long time. Because at the end of the day, the other thing that one needs to look at when it comes to finances, do you have dependents? Do you have aged parents you have to look after? Because it's very common to see married couples continue to stay with the parents, either parent. It's because then they can look after the aged parents. And in terms of finances, you actually save money when you stay together, rather than to have separate, because then you'll be looking after two separate households. So these are things that one need to look at also when you are discussing about getting married. These are things that you need to do. Then also the other thing is who's going to lead looking at finances, and how many children you want to have.
Yes.
You're coming to that, right?
Yes, because that actually amounts to how much money you have to spend later on as well. Okay, so we'll be getting to that question after the short break, though. We'll be taking a short break, and when we come back, I guess you guys know already, we're going to be talking about how much it actually costs to raise your family once you get to that point. Stay tuned on Ringgit Sense. Welcome back on Ringgit Sense. You're still with me, Azaria Tagaya, and we are still talking about the topic of marriage and money. And with us in the studio, we have Lynette Lee, the CEO of the Financial Planning Association of Malaysia. Okay, welcome back. Now let's continue our discussion. Before the break, we talked about the overall cost and how you should save and who should save. So now we want to talk about the breakdown of that cost, as you were starting to get into before we went for that break.
All right. How much it costs to run a family?
Yeah.
Well,
and depending on the number of children that you have,
correct,
as it increases,
and you will find that initially you'll be roughly about 60 to 70% of your income that you need to spend on your family expenses, and as the children grow, and you have more commitment, because if you decide to buy a house, you may want to upgrade your house. At some point, you may decide you want to have cars, or even 2 cars, because spouse have to fetch different children at different time. So at that time, you see the cost will escalate to maybe 80% or even 90%. So if you were to draw a graph, you'll find that as time goes by, as your income goes up, but your disposable income will reduce. The reason is because as much as you earn, you have more commitments already. So it takes up a large chunk. That's why it makes good sense that in the initial stages, before you get married, and after you get married, before children comes along, to put aside as much as you can into savings. Because when the children comes, there will be a lot of things that you need to look at. And also, if you, on top of that, you have aged parents, and we call those people sandwich generation, because they get sandwiched between dependents. You'll find that you'll be very heavy. More so, especially if aged parents do not have insurance, and they are dependent on you for everything. If your aged parents have got pension or anything, then at least financially you'll be lighter on the couple. And also whether one set of parents is dependent or both husband and wife, their family is dependent, that also will add on. And it can actually build up to practically having no savings, because most of your income is going into paying for everything.
Paying for everybody else's expenses, I see. Okay, so what about in terms of spending for your family? A couple should understandably pay for, you know, certain things, and like the husband may take up some spending and then the wife can spend for some other things. So how do you actually divide that? And how do you divide that when, let's say, one of the spouses doesn't have, maybe he works or she works freelance.
Yes.
So it's not a stable income month per month. So how do they deal with that?
So what happens is, especially when we do financial planning, normally what we do is when we will always look at the income of both husband and wife, and we look at the annual income, and then we apportion from there. However, in this case, if we talk about the day-to-day and month-to-month, just a general rule of thumb, it would be good to work out roughly, let's say, each spouse contribute how many % of their income consists of the total income. So let's say one spouse earns 70% of the total and they want 30. So you can apportion it accordingly. Then that it will be fairer, because if not, the spouse earning less is going to find it that, hey, you know, after I pay for everything in the house, 50-50, I've got nothing else for myself. It's not fair. So that would be one way to work out, because I just divert a little bit, Azaria, because if you look at divorce in Malaysia, the number one cause of divorce is money. The second one is infidelity, whether it's physical or emotional. And the third one is children. So as you can see, sandwiched between infidelity, money and children are the cause of what. So if you want to have a harmonious marriage and one that's sustainable, it's very important to talk about money and children, and also work out the expenses. And if they have any challenge in doing it themselves, then perhaps they will want to talk to a licensed financial planner to help them, because then the licensed financial planner will not just throw a plan at them. They will also help them to walk through each stage of their life. Because as things changes, even the way you invest, what you invest in would also depend on each stage of your marriage that you're in.
There are also married couples who keep their accounts separate. Is that okay or not?
It is, as long as they have understanding. And I think what would be the deciding factor would be the level of trust they have with each other, and whether they're comfortable with each other keeping separate accounts. And as long as they are quite happy with it, there's no one way to do things. It's very dependent, because people come from different culture. They have different ideas. So what is more important is between the two of them, what are they comfortable with and they're agreeable.
Okay, thank you so much, Lynette Lee, the CEO of the Financial Planning Association of Malaysia, for sharing with us on Ringgit Sense.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, there you have it, the discussion for today. Marriage and money. Hopefully you guys have some interesting takeaways from today's discussion. Now we're going to take a short break. We'll be back after this on Ringgit Sense. Welcome back on Ringgit Sense. You're still with me, Azaria Tagaya. And with the MRT and other public transport in place in the Klang Valley, many are now leaving their personal vehicles behind to commute to work. In our next story, we wanted to know, is it possible to live without a car in the Klang Valley? Well, the answers in this video.
It's not just the price of fuel that keeps rising. Cars are getting more and more expensive as well.
These days, it's crucial to have a car to get around in the Klang Valley. So we asked the question, is it possible to live and work in the Klang Valley without a car? Well, the simple answer is yes, and here's 5 reasons why.
Considering the efforts undertaken by the government to increase accessibility with the many LRTs, KTM trains and monorail trains, and not to mention many integrated stations, getting to work is as easy as just finding out the nearest station to you.
Kalau tak nak cari parking, tak nak bayar parking, tak nak jam, stress jam semua, better naik MRT lah. MRT pun memang selesa. Then very on time lah. For timing memang on time. So dia kerap pula, dia macam tak tunggu lama semua. So okey lah.
Sangat convenient lah sebab dapat jimat kos lah. Kalau naik kereta-kereta mahal lah, minyak mahal.
Okay, macam saya daripada Kajang ke sini, ke bandar utama, saya spend dalam RM8 lebih untuk sehari. Yes. 2 hala. So memang jimat lah, compare dengan kalau you naik kereta, you spend dalam RM20 ke RM30 lah.
So you say the train station is a considerable distance? No problem, just take the bus. Your options don't stop there. Ride-hailing apps are gaining momentum around the world, and for good reason too. You can actually save a lot of money. Here's another idea for you, carpooling. The trend is on the rise and it should be largely encouraged, as this method can help to improve traffic conditions and minimize costs. Some ride-hailing apps even offer a type of carpool service where drivers can offer to ferry more passengers if they have available seats in their daily routes. And after the success of ride-hailing apps, now a new trend is popping up, an app that helps you share the use of bicycles. O-Bike is one of a few companies that are now offering this service in Malaysia. Here's Young Ching, business planner at O-Bike, to tell us how it works.
So basically, O-Bike is doctorates by sharing. So what we're trying to solve here is actually the first and last mile transport solution. So anyone that want to travel in a short distance, they can use this so that they don't need to worry about to take care of their bikes. Or even this has become their alternative transport to replace, or maybe on walkings, or maybe the Grab and Uber things. So we hopefully this service can actually bring more green environment to the society as well.
The service is also very easy to use. The user can just download the app, then while activating Bluetooth, just scan the QR code on the bike to unlock it. Once the user is done, all they need to do is park the bicycle at the designated spot. Owning a car may be socially fulfilling, but consider the alternative modes of transportation available to you and ask yourself, do you really need a car at all? And make some sense of your ringgit.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week. For those of you who are planning to get married, go to our Facebook page at Ringgit Sense TV3 and tell us what are some of the most difficult topics about money that you've had to discuss. You can also watch today's interview at our Facebook page. I'm Azara Tagaya and I will see you next week.